Well, here we are, into first quarter 2026. A lot going on in our market nationally and locally and internally.
Yeah.
Here at Barker Realty.
Lots to talk
Why don't you cover some of those for us,
Oh
Kyle?
boy, where to begin? Yeah. Well, on a personal note, there was a little bit of news about me that kind of went out the last couple of days. I purchased the Broken Spoke bike shop, and so we're not just selling homes anymore around here. We're selling bikes. Yeah, that's a passion project, something that I've been involved with here in the community a long time. So I appreciate you let me do that, and I think it's gonna be a fun venture for everyone.
Well, and we appreciate the fact that you're going to do that and you're still going to be here and available to consult, participate, and help plan.
Yeah.
Because we appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm
You're
just
good at it.
might show up with a little bit of grease on the fingers occasionally,
Okay.
so just don't mind that.
All right, so that's the first one. I'll check that off.
And that's a change.
Yeah, right. That's a change. And then, of course, we have two new faces sitting here beside us. We have David Trujillo and Corey Kirkpatrick, both Santa Fe locals. So I'm sure there's many people who are watching this video going, "Hey, I know those guys." But they've been coming up the ranks around here as qualifying brokers, and that is official now. And so, welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
you should be.
Well, I am particularly excited. And, Laura announced some sort of retirement, and we refused to allow her to retire.
We
So
tried.
She's going to be very active in her sales, but she will be stepping down from her qualifying broker position. And if the two of you guys do a really good job, it'll be wonderful because I'll put myself out of a job, even though I'm always going to be here as a fisherman.
Some pressure.
Well, we'll just throw a vest on with some popcorn up front,
Right.
and we'll make them useful.
And an umbrella.
Yeah, exactly. And then also we have a community event going on right now. It's spring. It's that time of year where we do the Espanola Humane Drive. And so you'll see some announcements coming out from the office here about bringing in food, toys, other goodies for cats and dogs for Espanola Humane.
And if you haven't been up there, wow, they have a great new facility that's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's worth a visit.
Yes, it's beautiful, beautiful. But all the news out of the way. It is April somehow, frighteningly, and real estate's still moving. What's going on out there?
What's interesting that I look at is the transaction numbers seem to be softening a little bit. The particular difference between this year and the last 2 years is previously our market moved slowly and steadily.
Yes.
And now there seems to be a lot more instability. I'm seeing some big increases in sales and then decreases in sales. So the stability is no longer there like it used to be.
Well, Corey, I know because both of you are still doing some sales, right? And so, like, you're in the trenches, and I know you've mentioned to me that some properties that you think are just going to hit the market and be, get all the attention, that's not really happening. And then the flip side is other properties are getting multiple offers still, right? I mean, walk me through this.
It's hard to identify what's driving this, but I am seeing a lot of multiple offer situations, both with buyers and sellers. And it doesn't seem to be indicative of pricing or price point, but it's indicative of buyers showing up to the market.
Sure.
We have a lot of buyers that are here. It's strange that there are some properties that are still sitting on the market for a long time, and you would think that those would move quickly, but they're just not. So it is a lot of volatility, a lot of this market, that market sort of thing. What are you seeing?
I was talking to a seller about this pretty recently, and they almost feel like it's catching lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
I think timing has a lot to do with it and the specific type of property and where it's priced. Obviously, it's pricing is what's driving everything. I think anybody that's doing aspirational pricing is making a mistake, and I think that's where you're seeing an increase in the months of inventory. That's why I think we're seeing some, it looks like there's price drops, but I think it's not necessarily a price drop. It's the market's catching up.
It's the real market value.
It's the real market value,
Yeah.
and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
I think the aspirational pricing has a lot to do with it. I noticed January and February were a lot more volatile than March. It seems like March kind of softened things up a little bit. I as far as what I'm seeing, the same exact thing as Corey. some multiple offer situations, but I also see some houses that are going like I thought they would be going much quicker, but they're sitting much longer than anybody had anticipated.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like how do we, well, the market is somewhat plateaued pricing wise, right? So we haven't seen appreciation or depreciation in values really. It's fairly flat. The amount of transactions occurring, to your point, is also, it's softened a little bit, but it's still there. But we've seen more inventory enter the market. And I think we're on the front end of this sort of inventory where there's going to be some winners and losers in this, right? You know, there's 6 months of inventory roughly that, you know, in terms of absorption rate, and we're going to see some homes languish for a while if folks don't, you know, really step up and try to understand exactly where it needs to be positioned within the market. We've also seen a narrowing of the sell price to original asking price. So I do think sellers, for the most part, have actually done a good job of getting more realistic about where pricing is, right? That aspirational pricing has gone away to a certain degree. Other things.
One of the things I'm seeing that's interesting is I think that we're seeing a spike in inventory in part because there are people who bought during the pandemic or right after the pandemic and now have decided a couple of years later Santa Fe is not the spot for them, or they can go back home. And I think that's resulting in more inventory. And I also think we're seeing a few instances where people paid a pretty darn high price at that time, and they're not going to get out of it with the investment they have in the property in today's market.
Yeah, and that's that price adjustment, right? It's like they're trying to recover what they put in, and the chances are they might not.
Right.
So nationally, we've seen things are kind of all over the place, right? We've seen markets have significant declines. Overall, one of the more jarring sort of stats I come across is there's 3 times more homes on the market nationally than there are buyers at the moment, right? And that number, right, that has grown increasingly over the last 6 months. We kind of caught wind of it, you know, Q3 last year, where I was like, oh boy, this is starting to feel like inventory is piling up. I think we're there. And so nationally, you're starting to see a price decline for the first time, basically in a decade. And so, you know, for the buyers out there, that's some good news. Hasn't happened really locally here. But as we all know, Santa Fe's got a bit of a delay on it, right? So it's like, it's probably going to catch up to us at some point.
I think we're going to see more of that. As other markets get challenged, people need to sell their home back there before they can buy in Santa Fe. That is going to have an impact here locally.
So if you're a seller, David, what's your advice at the moment?
I think you have to be really on point with what you need to sell it for and the reasons why you're selling it. If you're selling it because you have to, there's a life change for whatever reason, then you need to be very, very careful with how you price it because you can end up losing the opportunity to maximize your value. I mean, every seller should be thinking about that anyways, but especially those ones that need to sell quickly. And you're competing with new construction. There's a lot of other things you're competing with in our market. I don't know about national. I was actually going to ask you about that. How much does new construction affect the numbers that we're looking at? Especially in Santa Fe, because there's a lot of new construction houses on the market that they're starting here, then they're dropping, then they're picking back up, and then they're dropping, and they haven't even sold. I mean, the price changes are just all over the place.
I do suspect, just from looking at just the data, not talking to builders or anything like that, I do suspect in the next year we are gonna reach a stage where there's a bit of an oversupply of new product on the market, right? And we're gonna see that. I actually think, particularly in our local market on the apartment side,
We're already seeing it.
it's like the rental market is definitely hitting a point, which again is great news for folks who are struggling, you know, to make rent. But for those folks who've invested in that, it might be a challenging market for the coming months. So we've seen that price softening. It's starting to soften locally.
I think some of these national developers are getting very aggressive in their pricing.
They sure are.
And offering incentives and below market interest rates. If you're competing with them with a house that was new 2 years ago, that's a challenging market to be in. And on the apartment side, to your point, Kyle, There are now apartments out there in Santa Fe where you can get 3 months of free rent
Yeah, or a
for
free
signing a
TV.
lease.
Or free
So-
TV, right? Yeah.
Is it a smart TV or is it just a regular?
It's just it's a CRT actually.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the other thing, if you're planning on listing, you have to put your best foot forward. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of competition out there, a lot of houses on the market. So if you're going to list, you can't. You have to put your best foot forward. I mean, that means painting, landscaping, staging your house,
Pre-inspections to make sure there's no surprises.
Your marketing needs to be on point because you're competing with other houses that have really good marketing and really good staging in place. And if you're not kind of keeping up with that, then you're not going to sell your house for max value. You're just not going to.
Yeah. So on the luxury side of things, it's a little bit of a different world out there than it was this time last year, right? You know, we saw an increase in interest in the luxury market. We saw an increase of purchasing. I mean, granted, it's always been seasonal, right?
Yeah.
The summers have always performed better than the winters. But there has been a decline in pending transactions there, and there has been a fairly strong amount of inventory. So what's happening on the top end?
Yeah, the inventory is at an all-time record high
Yeah.
in the luxury market, and the sales are not climbing like they have been historically. The luxury market has been very strong for the past few years, and now we're starting to see some softening there.
Yep. And
That's going to impact pricing. It has to.
I do wonder if that's indicative of sort of the national environment, right? Because a lot of times those are second homes or things like that,
And more of a discretionary transaction.
Exactly,
And to me, that where I get concerned with that is when you look at consumer confidence. Consumer confidence has really dropped substantially.
Yeah.
And if you look at the graphs, it's about on par with where we were during the housing crisis of 2008, 2010.
Yeah.
And yet, while we have some very challenging times out there, you know, we're not losing major Wall Street banks like we're going out of business back in that time period. So
Not yet. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I think the luxury market is, well, the next couple of months are going to be really telling, right? Because the summer typically has been the strongest months, and so I think we're a little early to call this one challenged or anything. But it's definitely worth noting that if you're in that world, the pricing, which has always been aspirational on the luxury side, right? You know, the gap between asking and what's actually at the closing table is usually substantial. It might not be the time to go fishing. Might not be a good time to go fishing. So on the buyer side, Corey.
Yes, sir.
So if I was a buyer right now, what should I be thinking about?
I think also putting your best foot forward.
What does that look like?
I think coming in with a strong offer, getting properties under contract, putting your best foot forward as a buyer, being met with the seller's best foot forward is a good path.
So are you talking like, I mean, everything, I've always hated the, pre-approved letter, right? Because like pre-approved letters don't really mean anything. So are you saying like, should a buyer be more prepared?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it's great to have that pre-approval letter. What other things can a buyer do to give a seller confidence that they have the ability to close? One thing that if I'm in a competing situation, I might limit my inspection objections to items of health and safety. Appealing to sellers' other interests besides price. What are some other creative things you can work with your broker on to come up with some terms that are attractive to the seller?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, it's not, I mean, a lot of times it does boil down to dollars and cents, but there's other things that can make an offer attractive.
Well, we have this new independent consideration.
Yeah, actually, I was going to ask you about that. It's like time out for the camera real quick.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. The forms that we all operate in change all the time, right? And there's been a substantial change recently. And so we've been working hard internally here at the office to make sure everyone understands it. That, as our clients, that you guys are in a position where we understand all the mechanisms at play here. So tell me about that.
Independent consideration. Well, our association attorney decided that in order to have a binding contract, a legally binding contract, that we need to have independent consideration paid between the parties, between buyer and seller. So the buyer is paying the seller a non-refundable deposit. This is not in replacement of earnest money. This is in addition to. So you're still making that good faith deposit during your transaction. This is a non-refundable. And it could be a small amount of money. It doesn't need to be anything significant. I've seen brokers using $1, but I've also
only $1.
only $1. It cannot be zero.
Right.
You have to. It has to be at least $1. But I have seen other brokers use it as an incentive, as a gift to the seller. We had one broker in the office that used over $1,000 in the independent consideration, and that was a term that got her buyers the contract in a multiple offer scenario. So lots of other things out there that we as brokers can collaborate with our buyers on and help create some creative terms that look good.
Yeah. I mean, it's important right now, especially on the buyers. Well, actually on both sides, right? Because your seller needs to understand all the terms of the new purchase agreement just as well as the buyer who's drafting, right? So, from the seller's perspective, what should they be looking out for?
Well, I mean, I think an educated buyer. I think that's what you don't want, is to be learning the contract as you're receiving the offer and you're going through the process.
Right.
You want confidence that this is going to make it to close, and the way the offer's written matters. The way the offer's written, with the contingencies that are in there, the way you use them. I think it's important that all buyers and sellers understand what they're offering.
Yeah.
And educating yourself is the best way to do it. And, if you're on the selling side, and you see a good offer, what do you tell your sellers? If you're on the listing side, you go, that's a well-written offer. That is a strong offer. These are the terms. All of these things feel pretty good. There's not much to count. There's a few things we need to clean up, but I think it's a good offer. When you give your seller that kind of confidence, then the contract tends to move a little bit smoother.
Yeah.
There's things that come up, but that's, I think, what Corey was talking about putting your best foot forward in your offer, being educated,
Right.
and writing the right type of offer.
Your comment about being educated. These real estate transactions have gotten so complicated lately. And our purchase agreement keeps getting longer, and the number of addendums keeps increasing. So you really need to be thorough and careful about reading through the contract to make sure that you really understand all the conditions that are in there. The other new item that we have in Santa Fe is the excise tax. Right. So that is now in effect. Title companies are requiring payment of that. Otherwise, they will create a big exception in the title policy, and the city ordinance says the buyer is responsible for paying for it if it doesn't get paid at closing. What we're seeing is most buyers and sellers are negotiating that as a part of the condition of the contract.
Right.
And again, that's a fee of 3% on the amount of the residential sales price over $1 million.
Over $1 million.
And we're seeing a lot of buyers and sellers just agree to split it 50-50.
Right. So if it's a $1.5 million contract, it goes to closing, you're looking at $6,000 then as part of that.
3%.
3% of the, yeah,
$500,000.
right. Correct. Okay, got it. And so, a lot of times a buyer and seller will split that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to look out for right now. I don't mean that in a scary way. It's just more of like, we always say in this office, it's like a mantra around here, is like slow down to speed up.
Yes.
Right? It's like doing the hard work first to get yourself in a position where you can act quickly when necessary.
And smartly.
Yes.
Right. I think I got to commend Barker, the brokerage in general, just for how on top of it we were last week. All the brokers that were in attendance for the updated forms and things like that. It just shows that there's some pride in the work that's been done. And I think that pride and getting in front of it really helps a seller and buyer feel more comfortable with us and confident that we're going to protect their money. Right. As best as we possibly can.
Well, and that gets to the point of, it's like we've talked about, we've collectively talked about the vision within the office a lot recently.
Yes.
Right. Like kind of recentering where we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it. And, that vision of being the standard in Santa Fe for folks, right? And putting people first, I think, to your point is you have to be educated.
Absolutely.
You have to be there for your client. And so, Yeah, those are great questions asked in those meetings. I think everyone around here is on the same page. And so, if you're out there as a buyer or seller, looking to make a move soon, it's like, be sure to, investigate and ask good questions with who you're working with, right? Because these things matter at the end of the day to get to the closing table. And they can cost you dearly if you don't.
And be thorough on those inspections if you're a buyer.
Yeah.
We just keep
Inspection,
hearing
inspect,
always.
inspect.
terrible
Yeah.
stories because inspections are usually pretty good,
Yep.
but they're not foolproof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not going to see everything that's there, and every house has its warts somewhere or another.
It's the charm of Santa Fe.
Yes, yes.
Well, that's
The uniqueness of the property.
It's uniqueness. Yes, exactly.
I tell clients real estate in Santa Fe is on expert mode.
Yeah.
We really need to be educated.
You do, for sure.
So, what do we think is coming in the future? Where do you think the market is headed this summer, David?
I think this is gonna be a strong market. I
Yep.
mean, I really do. I mean, if the inventory, what I'm seeing in the report versus what I'm experiencing on a day to day, not just with myself, but talking to other brokers that are active and actually doing business. I mean, I entered into several multiple offer situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
in the-
recently.
just recently in 2026.
Yeah.
And that tells me that there's movement.
Yeah.
There's things happening. And I think if the trend that sellers are being more realistic with their pricing, that's an opportunity for buyers to get the house that they want.
Yeah.
Then I think that's going to catch up. So I think there's going to be some movement, and I feel good about it. And I think sellers should feel good about it too. Buyers as well, especially if they're not shooting for the stars with that pricing. And some of them are, but that's why you hire the right person to help you get to the closing table. But I feel good about it. I mean, everybody I'm talking to has been fairly busy,
Yep.
and the sky's not falling in or anything like that. And for me, when I see multiple offer situations on properties that have no business having multiple offer situations, I'm like, okay, there's buyers out there.
There's still pressure.
Yep.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And you're still seeing finance transactions as well, despite
Absolutely.
the fact that interest rates have taken a little uptick.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that there was a lot of recoil from consumers when rates went up. I think we've
How could
reached,
there not be?
Right.
Yeah.
I think we've reached a point though where those rates are accepted. We've realized that they're not coming back down anytime soon, and so we've got to get on with life. We've got to get on with the needs.
The situation with the treasuries, we've talked about this in the past,
Yep.
mortgage-backed securities competing against treasuries and like keeping those rates high despite whatever the Fed decides to do. We saw that really active in the last couple of weeks with the conflict in the Middle East. And so, watching those interest rates climb again, I'm going to push back a little bit on you. I think we're going to have a strong market in the sense that we're going to see a lot of transactions. I just think that buyers have lost a little bit of leverage when it comes to pricing, right? Like it's costing more to finance. It's costing more for everything, right? The inspections and repairs and and given the inventory numbers, I'm going to say I think the buyers were just slightly starting to err on the side of it. Might lean towards a buyer's market as more homes come on this summer. That's my guess. And I don't mean it like in a seller like should freak out. I just saying like I think that buyers are pressured on so many different fronts that given the inventory growth that we've seen, they have options.
Oh, absolutely.
They have options.
No, for sure. And especially when you're competing with new construction, sellers are competing with new construction and a lot of the other conditions that you've mentioned already. I think the thing that where my head's at is the interest rates have dropped from where they were a couple of years ago to a point to where the gap in between, where the optimal point is maybe 4.5%, 5%, maybe.
Yeah.
The gap in between where we're at now and that number is decreased, which means the sellers can contribute to a buyer's interest rate.
Yeah.
Whereas a few years ago, that gap was just way too large. It was just going to cost way too much money to get that interest rate down. And the reason I'm saying that is because I'm seeing that in offers. So
Interesting, yeah.
when you start seeing that in offers, that means that buyers are a little bit more savvy. Their brokers know how to get them the payment that they want in concert with the lender.
Yep.
And I think because of that, it's not just a shock anymore. Once you start getting used to how things are going, people start feeling a little bit more comfortable. And the caveat, of course, is just so long as sellers are being realistic with how they're pricing their houses,
Yep.
you know, you should be okay. But if you're still trying to go really, really high, yeah, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, or you get too hard line on negotiations, right? Because like at least the terminations that I've been privy to, they are because someone dug in their feet. They're like, this is, you know, we're not making any concessions, and it all falls apart. And I can almost guarantee for that seller digging in, it's going to cost them more with days on market because that home is going to sit. And so, you know, it's just the calculus is not as simple as it looks, right?
Absolutely.
And so you gotta take a 30,000 foot view and really understand what you're up against.
Right.
So yeah, I you know, the market's there. There's demand there. We know Santa Fe is still a desirable place. We talk about that almost every single time. That hasn't changed. What's changed is just how much is on the market.
That's
And at some point,
right.
that it's going to tip.
Take the bird in the hand.
And take the bird in the hand. That is always good advice, right? That is great advice. Well, thank you guys. Yeah, first time on video here. How's it feel?
Welcome to the table.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Love it. I'm ready for another.
You're ready
conference.
for it? Yeah. It's like, all right, well, the podcast is coming then, right? Yeah. Yeah. We'll start the football podcast after this. Yeah. Oh, God. There's a lot of opinions in this one. Well, thank you, everyone. Yeah, there's a lot to talk to your brokers about right now. So, you know, so make sure you're having those conversations.
Absolutely.
That's the advice. And worst comes to worst, come buy a bike from me.
Let's
there
do
you
it.
go.
Right? I got to do my plug.
Right,
Yeah.
let's do it. Broken spoke.
Yeah,
Just down the street from us.
Yeah, we'll be eventually. Yeah,
Yeah.
not
Good deal.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.